Hey there, friends. Welcome once again to another installment of Strange Planet. And on this episode, we'll take a look at a brand new scientific study on the effects of frequency and quantum technology on bee colonies. But before we get to that, just a friendly reminder, if you'd like to get a little deeper into Strange Planet, you might want to consider becoming a premium subscriber, and it's real easy to do. Just click on the link in the episode description, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. As a premium subscriber, you gain access to commercial-free listening, special bonus episodes produced exclusively for premium subscribers. You also receive my monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. All right, so this is, I believe, part 4 of an ongoing series on quantum technology, healing frequencies, and saving the world's bees, which are absolutely essential for all of us, for life on this planet. And we're going to reintroduce you to a good friend of the program from 4hourbees.com. And as I mentioned, a brand new scientific study. Let me introduce, first of all, or reintroduce Dr. Magda Havas, an associate professor of environmental and resource studies at Trent University in Peterborough, Ontario. And since the mid-1990s, Dr. Havas has taught about electromagnetic pollution in several courses at Trent University, has supervised reading courses and honors thesis projects in this area, and one of the courses deals specifically with the biological effects of electromagnetic fields, which is what we're going to talk about, and electromagnetic radiation. It's one of the few courses available in North America at a senior undergraduate level, critically examining the effects of non-ionizing radiation. She's given in excess of 360 presentations in more than 30 countries and at more than 24 universities and colleges on her research. Many of these presentations are at medical and environmental conferences. She's also invited to talk to public interest groups in North America and Europe. And we're going to find out more about this scientific study. First, let's say hello to Dr. Magda Havas. Magda, good to see you again. How are you?
Lovely to be here, Richard.
All right. Now, next up, this is his 4th appearance on the podcast. Brent Knudsen is a self-made entrepreneur who learned in the 1990s that mathematical algorithms, quantum physics, and frequencies were going to shape the future, and went on to forge one of the largest Canadian debit and credit card processing platforms, known as Tangerine Concepts. His company became a tremendous success and was eventually sold to Goldman Sachs in 2009. He was then able to devote his time and energy to pursue his true passion for unlocking the power of sacred geometry and natural quantum field frequency healing. His technologies have now been in use within the wellness industry for years with amazing results, and people benefiting from pain reduction, improved injury recovery, anti-aging properties, and improved health. He's passionate about frequency and quantum field technology and excited to bring these technologies to the world at large. And he is the founder and CEO of 4 Hour Bees, Inc., a global initiative. 4 Hour Bees, a mission-driven enterprise that uses a revolutionary quantum field technology called PureWave. Brent, welcome back to Strange Planet. How are you?
Hi, Richard. Yeah, no, honored to be back with you. It's great to follow up from that last show. So really good to be here.
So it's been a while. So let me just kind of recap. As I say, this is kind of part 4 of this ongoing series. In part 1, we talked about what the ancients knew, which, as it turns out, is quite mind-blowing. We talked about what the ancients knew about frequencies and healing, and of course the sacred geometry, the star tetrahedron, which we see not only on the flag of Israel, we just see it everywhere on ancient artifices. We see it in stained glass windows in cathedrals across Europe. We just see it everywhere. It's also sometimes referred to as the flower of life. We learned that this is where it gets so, it's just mind-blowing. This is, we learned that the ancients were using the star tetrahedron and the flower of life as a 2-dimensional representation of a 3-dimensional object, which is, here it is, the atom. The atom. And of course, we have trillions of atoms. And we also talked about how the Earth's natural electromagnetic field, its torus field, interacts with the human torus field. We also have a torus field in all of this electromagnetic activity going on with all of these trillions of atoms in us, in our cells, and so forth. And how again, getting back to the star tetrahedron and the flower of life, that frequency interacting is optimal, provides optimal health for cells, not only human cells, but plant cells, animal cells, and so forth. And then we talked about how at 4RBs, you have taken this ancient knowledge, this concept of the flower of life, or the star tetrahedron, and you've managed to produce that frequency with this quantum technology, these pure wave cells. And as it turns out, these pure wave cells have an incredible effect on bee colonies, which of course are in great distress around the world. We're getting bee colonies dying off, colony collapse around the world, and we're trying to figure out why and how to stop it. And that brings us to Dr. Magda Havas and her brand new study. Brent, just you want to jump in and add anything I missed in some summarizing the previous 3 episodes?
No, you nailed it pretty good there. Just that adding to it that not only seeing this geometry in what you were referring to, which is all our religions and so forth, it's actually in nature, in snowflakes. It's also in all beehive structures. It's one of the main structures that universally is used here, and not just here. It's beyond our planet. It's a universal structure, but in us, it's a blueprint. It's a blueprint for how we actually can communicate with cells, and feeding them, just like negative frequencies can feed them in a different way. So yeah, you've nailed it down there, and we followed that blueprint to what we're about to talk about today.
Right.
So that's.
So, yeah, just talk to me a little bit, though, more about, and this is where sort of my audience comes in, and you've been on Coast to Coast with your colleague, Jake Cunningham, and we've talked about, using this pure wave cell technology to save bee colonies. Just talk about what kind of, how has the audience been responding, and how can they support for our bees?
Well, that's great. Yeah. So the audience, the largest audience that we've gone to is Coast to Coast. And thanks to you, Richard, on that as well. The response was nothing short of phenomenal from the people. And I think it was in 2-part, not only because of what we described, what we're doing, which is, really exciting when we get into it, what's going on. But there's something unique to people, how we're connected to bees, and they really responded to supporting and helping the bees. And that at 4RBs, which is with a number 4, so I just want to put that as 4 and then RBs, is what we do is that on the products that they support it, which is the honey from those beekeepers, and the cells going into the hives that Mag's going to talk about here, Magda's going to talk shortly, is that's what they were supporting. So we've been able to expand into hundreds of more hives, and then thousands of more hives coming up that'll be in the fall. So it really is due to the audience and the support of the public out there. And it's been nothing short of phenomenal that they've come. And that, what I mean by is they bought products such as honey, so the best honey in the world that's coming out of those hives, and the pure wave cells for the use for themselves, which we'll talk about too. And then supporting, because if we're going to support bees, there's only one way to do it. We have to support the beekeepers, because they control 98% of all bees. So that's who we're supporting. All of that is giving to them at no cost. So that is the key. How do we support that and do it financially? And it's the public that's doing it. It's been phenomenal, right? And we look forward to the future.
All right, and so now we welcome Dr. Magda Havas again. Magda, welcome. So let's dive right in and tell us about. Maybe before we get into the nuts and bolts of the study, maybe you can talk a little bit about how you and Brent Knudsen and 4RBs hooked up.
Okay, well, we met through Bob Connolly, who's doing a documentary on Tesla medicine, the virtual fluid, I think it's called. Bob and I have been working together for over 10 years, looking at the harmful and beneficial effects of electromagnetic frequencies. Some are harmful, and we know some are beneficial. And Bob mentioned the pure wave and that it's being used to help bee colonies. And I became quite intrigued by this because obviously, like everyone else, I'm concerned about bee populations. They're a very important part of our ecosystem, not only financially, but for the benefit of, flowering plants, that sort of thing. And he mentioned the pure wave and that it was being used in helping bees recover over the winter. And it was really making a big difference. So he introduced me to Brent, and I went to the locations where these bees are being kept. There are different fields where they're using the pure wave magnet, and there are fields where they're not using the pure wave magnet. So it sets up a perfect study to compare the two. And these studies have been ongoing for about 3 years, I think, if that's right, Brent. Different beekeepers have been participating in various ways, some with very large colonies and some with just, backyard beekeeping. And when I found out that they had already done 3 years of testing and the results were really very positive, I was just jumping at the bit to see if we could do a scientific study, because that's what ultimately makes a difference in the world if it's published scientifically. And so Brent was kind enough to invite me to be part of the team. And we started a study last fall. When the bees were being put away for the winter, and we're following them now, and the results are really absolutely amazing.
So your research has been involved in the ozone, acid rain effects of EMFs on human health and bees, mapping 5G towers and so forth. When you first heard about the technology from filmmaker Bob Connolly and then met Brent and Jake and saw these pure wave cells, this array of magnets, I mean, what did it make, I guess maybe on an intuitive level or based on your experience, did it make sense, or were you thinking, wait a minute, how is this going to save our bees?
I think it was more of how is this going to save our bees? I was somewhat skeptical until I talked to some of the beekeepers, and the results they were getting were astronomically positive. And so and these are really, beekeepers who have been in the business several generations, so they really understand their bees, and they're doing a great job keeping them going. But when they were testing these magnets, the bees were much more active, much less aggressive, highly productive. So it was all very, very positive. And I remember a few years ago, we actually did a study trying to see if bees would they react to microwave radiation. And so we went out to a farm. A friend of mine has bees, and he allowed us to do some experiments. So we drove up in an Airstream and had electricity and, plugged in baby monitors and cordless phones, things that people are normally exposed to in their homes. And we plugged them in and put them near a beehive. And we had another beehive that was totally shielded from this radiation with special paint and that sort of thing. So we were studying the bees that where the radiation was right adjacent to them. And one of the things we noticed was that the bees became very docile, to the point where you could go up to them and they'd be lying at the mouth of the beehive, and they'd just be sort of doing this, like waving very gently. And some of them were so still that we were wondering if they were alive. And then we had a bit of an accident. The farm dog ran by the electrical cords and disconnected everything simultaneously. And the most amazing thing happened. When the radiation went away, the bees started to swarm. They were coming out of the hives in droves, and they were buzzing around. They were extremely aggressive. to the point that they started attacking everyone, including the farm dog. They were going after swallows. I remember it was in the middle of summer and there were swallows flying around overhead and the bees were attacking the birds. And so we got out of there really, really quickly. But one of the things that told us is that the bees are able to sense this radiation. They find it like an invader. So they came out to basically attack the source of the radiation. And there have been a lot of other studies with bees and electrosmog. And one of the things we know is that bees won't return to a hive that has a cell phone, for example, underneath the hive. They'll simply leave and not bother coming back. So bees are able to sense this. We know that. They have a magnet in their abdomen that tells them location. So they need magnetic fields for geolocating. And very often, if they're exposed to radiation that they don't like, they'll simply leave. And that's one of the problems with colony collapse disorder.
Back to you, Brent. How important was it for your mission and for our bees to get some scientific rigor involved here and Dr. Magda Havas's study? What does it mean to the mission?
Well, it gives great credibility, but what I'll just step back a second on, and then I'll go forward with that answer. What was so unique, what I find that the synergy and unique. So Dr. Magda Havas was doing this, what she just described. She was doing this with Bob, like separate from us before we ever met, probably a year or two before. So while that was going on, I was developing this and going in and doing tests with, like I started in 2015, starting with a beekeeper that was willing to separate their hives that were only like 50 yards apart. And we started doing this thing. So we were doing these things without knowing it, separate apart for different reasons and looking at it for different. So that in going through that, what my feeling was, so there's academic, so we're talking to Magda, and then there's myself, which is in the inventing and trying to figure this out. What I've felt intuitively is that regardless of what we were going to do, academically, I wanted to get in and see if it actually was doing something with the bees, right, with the beekeepers, right? So, because truly I could give the beekeepers all kinds of reports and they wouldn't care. They want to know what it's doing, right? So I got in there. And then, so I remember when our mutual friend Bob Connolly introduced us, I remember, and I could even, when I first met Maddie, I could tell it was like, yeah, that's cool. It's, you guys, and it's a bit skeptical, right? Mm-hmm. So having someone like that come in after the fact, pretty much a year, 2 or 3 years into it, but mainly by having her experience and come in with us and be with the beekeepers, because that's, to me, I wanted to immerse with them, and they're very skeptical people. Beekeepers are not easy to deal with. They're farmer type backgrounds, and they're very skeptical. And it's more than just the pure wave cell and building. It's their food sources that we deal with. So we support them all the way around. So there's more, and they have to look after the bees. It's not just one thing. It's not a miracle thing. It's just really good. And so by having and that Magda was so gracious to come in, and then seeing them, I thought this will give huge credibility on the academic side. Now, to answer your question, it's really important for people that are unaware or that couldn't be there to see what we see, to be able to say, okay, well, I can trust this, so that, that someone like Magda's not going to go there and just write stuff. They can take her word for it because she does the work. Now, we do the work too, but that's not our area, right? So, and it's not, we wouldn't do the process that, can be recognized. So that we needed that. And so I was just thrilled. And of course, it's so enjoyable. And it's enjoyable to be with the beekeepers and see what's going on and see what happens. And then I don't know, I can't speak for Magda, but to be around bees and to see it, there's something it does to you, right? It's like an awakening in you, that when you're with beehives and you see what they do, it's sort of all life makes sense to you at that point. It's like you're connected to nature in a way that you want to be. So anyway, so that was a long answer, but that's why it's extremely important that we do both, and that we're continuing to do both. and that we're really making a difference out there.
All right. We'll take a quick time out. Dr. Magda Havas, Brent Knudsen, for our bees. Stay with us. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. And we are back. Dr. Magda Havas, Professor Emeritus, Trent University, Environmental and Resource Studies. And we're talking about a brand new scientific study on the effects of frequency and quantum technology on bee colonies. Brent Knudsen is here, founder, CEO of 4RBees, Inc., 4rbees.com. The link is in the episode notes. It's the number 4, the letter R, and then bees, 4RBees.com. And before we get back to the study, Brent, how can my audience get involved, help save bees, and maybe enjoy some honey?
Well, that's exactly what we do. So when we're coming to your audience, and again, super grateful for the support. Is that so? When we're going through these studies, what we found is that the abundance of honey that was produced in hives that had the pure wave cell versus, so we knew it was super healthy, and then we extract that honey from those hives and we pay the beekeepers what's called premium or fair trade. So they get more money for the honey than they would by anybody else, again, supporting the beekeepers so that they continue to do that. And then that honey is available to your audience. So that and we use other frequency technology that we had in previous shows is to then infuse it with other frequencies. So it is really a premium honey. It's raw, it's cream, and totally fantastic tasting. So that's one area. And then the pure wave cell, what it's doing for the bees is also doing for human beings. So thanks to Bob Conley, our associate friend between the two of us, and what he does, because he's involved in Tesla Technologies. He did a lot of testing with it on things like for plants and also human body. We were doing that as well, and what it does for pets, because it's the same cells that we're dealing with. So food was a biggie because we sent it to a food lab in Quebec, Pathogenia, and they did testing on raspberries and chicken, and it removes pathogens in the food that you're getting from the grocery store. And we have those studies on our site. So I won't go through all of that right now. But just so that your audience can understand, all pathogens and different viruses are just frequencies. That's what they are. So what we're looking to do is counter that or neutralize it, just like you do sound canceling earphones, where you cancel one sound with another. So it works really well, but you have to have the right frequency and get the right algorithm. So that's what the whole studies were about, to get that right. And so they can do that by going to our site and using the code word honey. Richard, if they put the code word honey in, we'll give everybody 20% off our products for listening to your audience. So that's exclusive to you. And so by going there, they can do that. They can go and just plug that in, and they can look at all our information and site, and they can choose what's best for them.
Right.
And they can educate themselves because we have videos and so forth on there. So we're happy to do that and support.
4rbees.com. The number 4, the letter R, bees.com. The link is in the episode notes. Use the code word honey. You can buy the honey. You can buy the Pure Wave cell, which again, I mean, it fits in the palm of your hand. So back to the study, Dr. Havas. So Brent mentioned, they were just kind of, as best they could, it was maybe more of an observational study. They were taking some of these Pure Wave cells. They gave them to the beekeepers. They would put them in some of their hives, but not others. How is your study a little different? I mean, you have to obviously account for different variables and so forth. So just tell us some of the scientific rigor that you brought to your study.
Well, we had a form that the beekeepers would complete when they were working with the bees, and we're trying to get quantitative data. So we asked all sorts of questions, how aggressive were the bees, how docile were they, how active were they, that sort of thing. We also asked about surroundings, were there, mites available in the hive. So there's a lot of things that are affecting the bees. It's not just radio frequency radiation. And we were trying to get a good handle on all of them. One of our beehive studies is they have 2 hives located about 5 kilometers apart. So we know that in other with some of the smaller hives, the bees might be very close to each other. The hives might be very close to each other with and without the magnets. And we felt that was a little bit too close, that they might be getting some of the benefits from the magnets. So we went with the larger study that was quite a distance apart. And we know the vegetation surrounding it. We know that they're using pesticides, that, they're exposed to all the normal things. It's not as though this is a special site. It's just a regular, beehive out in the environment. And so what we brought to it was the rigor of getting actual numbers when they were checking the hives, cleaning the hives, replacing queens, for example. And because of that, and with the knowledge of the beekeepers, I'm not a bee expert by any stretch of the imagination. So we used a lot of their raw knowledge that came after generations, of being beekeepers, and they just know, they understand their bees, and they were thrilled. Now, one of the things we wanted to do as a follow-up study is one of the larger beehives that has over 30 hives in each of the locations with and without the Pure Wave. We wanted them to switch. So the hives that had the Pure Wave magnets, we wanted them to be placed in the other hive, and just to see if there was, a crossover, if we could get the same results. And the beekeeper very wisely said, under no circumstances is he going to give up his Pure Wave. The good hives. And so Brent very kindly provided additional magnets, the Pure Wave magnets, to the other hives. So what we're going to do for the second part of the study is compare the 2 hives, both of them with the Pure Wave, but comparing it to last year. So we're going to see how the hive that didn't have the Pure Wave, how they changed relative to the hive that always had it. So we're going to use that as a control, and just to make certain that it's not something in the environment that's causing the difference.
Right. We should point out, this is an independent study, right? I mean, Brent, you didn't pay for the study. 4RBees didn't pay for the study. It's totally independent.
That's right.
No, yeah, kindly, Magda, that's what I say was really appreciative. She's doing this on her own, and no, we don't pay for at all, for this, because it's an independent study, right? So what's the I guess the base level then? When you have after the winter and you have a die-off, or in some cases total collapse of a colony, what's the first thing you looked at when you opened up the beehives after the winter in the spring to see how many bees were left, or how does that work? What's your kind of your base level? Do you want to ask me or Magda?
Oh, Magda. Yeah, sorry.
Yep.
Could you repeat that question? I thought you were asking Brent.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just in terms of the like, when do you start to measure is it the number of bees before a winter, before the collapse, and then you take a look at and see how many have survived? I mean, how does it, just kind of walk me through what you're actually looking at?
Okay, well, when you take the top off the beehive, you can see all the bees in there. And when you compare the bees with and without the pure wave, there's a world of difference. In the hives with the pure wave, the bees are active. If anything, there were too many bees in some of the hives and they had to be split because they were so healthy. And that's with the pure wave. When you look at some of the hives without the pure wave, first of all, there's fewer bees. They're not active. And it looks like the colony is about to die because a lot of them have swarmed. They're no longer there. So there's a huge visual difference when you compare the hives. That's really obvious. But then we ask beekeepers about a lot of other things. So how active are the bees? How aggressive are the bees? Because you don't want aggressive bees when you're dealing with them. And normally, if you treat your bees well, they're not going to be aggressive at all. So we're asking these specific questions of the beekeeper. And so when they're going through and opening the hives and cleaning them and, doing what they normally do with the bees, they're actually taking notes for us as well. So we get a sense of every single beehive, how it's doing. And then we can do some statistical analysis because there's over 30 beehives in each of the locations. So we've got a fairly good sample size. And then we, obviously want to get as much information from the experts, which are the beekeepers. And so I asked them all sorts of questions. And they've been really, really generous in how they've answered and, explained the importance of the queen bee and the worker bees and all of that. So they're just really pros at this, and it's a real pleasure working with them as a result.
What are some of the things that you noticed when the pure wave cell was placed inside the hive, either you or the beekeepers? What were they noticing about the ways or the way in which the bees were interacting with the pure wave cell?
Well, one of the interesting things is that if you put anything in a beehive, so these pure wave cells are, they're about that size, and we place them under the hive. So they're not inside the hive, they're actually under the hives. And whenever you place anything in a hive or near a hive, if the bees don't like it, they'll cover it with propolis. So they sort of isolate it. So for example, if a small mouse got into a beehive, it wouldn't survive long. It would be killed, and then it would be covered with this propolis. When we were first doing our study, we wanted to hear the sound that the bees were making. So we actually inserted a microphone. We drilled a little hole in the beehive, and we inserted a microphone because just before they're about to swarm, they make a special sound. And this is research that was already done in Europe, and we were simply trying to repeat it to see if we could get the same results. So, and they were already beginning to cover over the microphone with this propolis. What we find with the pure wave is that they walk across it, which is the ideal thing to do. So you've got a static magnetic field. And when that static magnetic field is moving relative to a living organism, or the organism is moving relative to the magnetic field, that's when you build up the energy inside the body. And we have things that are similar to that. We have pulsed electromagnetic fields for humans that they can lie on a mat and it will pulse different frequencies through their body, energizing them, giving them a lot more energy, helping their mitochondria, for example. And these bees just really seem to enjoy walking across the magnet. It was like they were charging themselves up. There was no attack to the magnets. It was just something that was totally accepted. So we know that they enjoy that, or they wouldn't be doing that. They're not covering it up. And so they're really quite happy with that magnet near their beehive.
What about when we're talking agriculture, we talk about yields. I don't know if we use that same term for honey production. Did your study cover that? The difference in the yield of the honey with and without the pure wave cell?
Well, we asked farmers to guesstimate the amount of honey. So as soon as you pull up open up a hive, you can tell if there's a lot of honey in there or not. Like it's heavier, you can just see it. So in the field, we ask them to estimate the relative amount of honey, but we're still waiting for the numbers to come, because once you've harvested, then you've got more precise numbers. So we're still waiting for that information before we publish the paper.
Anecdotally, Brent, what are you hearing from beekeepers in terms of the honey production with and without the pure wave cell?
Yeah, and as Magda just said, that we're just about to get that data in the way that she requires it too, like so that it can be identified. But we've noticed that since I've been doing the studies of it, the very first study I did, that's all I could relate to, because we did it with a holistic beekeeper, and we separated 7 hives from each other. Both 7 hives, we separate them 50 yards apart. And so they were all foraging on the same food. Everything was identical, except there was a 50-yard distance. And the bees that had the pure wave cells on it produced over 80% more honey than the other hive. And it was phenomenal. So like, it was such a difference that, that it was dramatic. But here we'll get more data on to that, and we'll get better numbers. But there's no question that healthier bees produce more honey. So we just need to know how much, right, what it is. But something I wanted to add to what Magda was saying is that even in the yard that we have the really healthy hives with the pure wave, over a 3-year period, 2 to 3 years, you're going to lose beehives anyway, just naturally. So this year we went in. Like last year, it was out and out phenomenal, the growth and the production in that yard. When we went in this year, when Magda went in this year, there was some die off in that yard with the pure wave cells. And I talked to Thomas about that. I said, so, and he said, no, Brent, like it wouldn't matter what, over time you're going to have some loss, because those bees just they wear out. It's done there. So why I'm saying that is what we also do at 4RBs is that we replace new hives and queens and support there financially, because they'll go out and buy, let's say, 100 new queens or some nukes. Nukes are a little bit of queens and a colony, and that costs them. They have to go and spend that money. So what we do, again, from the support from your listeners, when they buy our products, that money goes back into supporting those queens for them, and also providing special wildflower seeds. We're doing a big whole group seeding in 2 weeks, where we go out and we go to our multiple beekeepers, and we pick an area, and all kinds of really, really wonderful volunteers come out, and we give them T-shirts and we do food, but they go and they seed that area because that's their food source. So there's many, many things that we're doing here. One of the main things is in the hive, but then we do that, and then we supply new bee queens, and so that financially puts them where they can expand out. So they'll keep doing it, and they'll be strong. So they're strong. If the beekeepers are strong, then the hives are strong. So I just want to say that that's how it goes, and that's why the support is so necessary, because we can financially turn that in for the beekeepers.
4ourbees.com. The number 4, the letter R, bees.com, 4rbees.com. There's honey there available for sale. There are the pure wave cells, which are not only good for the bees, they're good for your pets, they're good for you. And again, the proceeds sort of funneled back into the 4RB's mission, which is to help and support beekeepers all over the world, get as many of these pure wave cells into as many hives as possible, and support the beekeepers and provide optimal health for bee colonies as they're trying to stave off this worldwide problem of bee colony collapse. We'll take another quick time out, back with more of our conversation right after these. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. And we are back with Dr. Magda Havas, Professor Emeritus, Trent University in Peterborough, Ontario, and an Associate Professor of Environmental and Resource Studies. And she's conducted this new independent study involving these pure wave cells, this pure wave technology developed by Brent Knudsen and 4Our Bees, Inc. 4ourbees.com is the website. Use the code HONEY, and what is it? Is it 20%, Brent?
Yes. Yeah. 20% off any of our products for your customers to come in and support us. I just wanted to add, we started off in a little place up here in Collingwood, Ontario, or Meaford, more accurately Meaford and Grey Highlands. But now, thanks to your audience and our people at Coast to Coast, we now are in Hawaii, Indiana, Florida. So this will be world. This will be where we world. The more that we do this and get the support, and we'll do a lot more to offer and to help people to support us. But we're already becoming, what we started off as national. Now we're going international, North America, and then we'll branch out. And the response we're getting from beekeepers now all over, the call has gone out. And of course, how can they lose? All it is a financial incentive. We're giving them everything. So they are now coming to us in massive beehive way, right? They're coming to us. So this is, and again, thanks to the public.
Magda, back to the study. This will eventually be published? It'll be peer reviewed and it'll appear in a journal. Do you have a journal in mind, or what's the next step?
Well, I have several journals in mind. Obviously, the more popular journals are the ideal ones to submit to. I think I'd like to submit this to Nature, but they have a 90% rejection rate because they have so many people. So we're going to start with Nature. And if they recognize the value of this, then it'll go global. But there are other journals that are very specific to agriculture, for example, and those are the other journals that we're going to try to publish in if Nature doesn't prove successful.
And it'll go through a peer review process and the gold standard, as they say.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And then I really would like to do more research with this. One study is lovely, especially one that shows the great benefits of to the bees and to the beekeepers. But ultimately, we'll have other questions. You always have more questions than you have answers to. And that's why I asked the beekeeper if they would switch the yards with and without the pure wave. And when he refused, I totally accepted that. And Brent was very kind to offer more pure waves for the other hive that didn't have the pure wave. So we're going to see if that actually improves them compared to last year, for example.
Yes, because repeatability is, of course, essential when we're doing any kind of experiment. So you have to keep repeating this. So what are some of the major conclusions that we come away with from your study involving beehives and the pure wave cell?
Well, first of all, the bees are much more healthier, much more active, less aggressive, highly productive, like everything. So if you look at a hive that has the pure wave, it just looks like a very healthy, highly productive hive. When you go to some of the other hives that don't have it, the bees seem to be much more aggressive. Their hygiene isn't as good. So you can see the hive actually deteriorating over time. And so you know that it has a limited lifespan as a result of that. So the difference visually is phenomenal. Now, one of the things I just wanted to mention is I had a colleague, a friend come and visit a little while ago, and I had the Pure Wave on the table. I was sharing some of the research I was doing with him, and he had a frozen shoulder. And I said, you know, if you take that Pure Wave and you just move it over your shoulder for a couple of minutes, let's see what difference it makes. And, you know, he's an old friend of mine, so he sort of tolerates some of the things I encourage him to do. So he sort of did this as well while we were talking. And then when he finished, he lifted his arm and he goes, I could lift my arm this high. And that was just a few minutes of the Pure Wave. So it has a lot of other benefits that we have yet to discover. But it's helping pets, it's helping people, it's helping the bee population. It's really a bit of a miracle.
Any idea how it works, Magda? Let's talk specifically with the bees. Why is it preventing colony collapse? Why is it making them less aggressive, making them more healthy, producing more honey?
Well, you know, some of the other research I do, not only do I look at the harmful effects of, you know, Wi-Fi and that sort of thing, I've also been studying pulsed electromagnetic field therapy to help people benefit from this. And when it comes to pulsed electromagnetic fields, and this is very similar to that, the PEMF devices are classified as a wellness device, and they have several characteristics that the government has acknowledged. One is that they increase circulation. So if they're going to improve circulation within the human body, everything is going to flow that much better. So if you have blockages, that's when you begin to have illness. And I suspect it's doing the same thing in the bees. As the bees walk across that magnet, it's causing a higher magnetic field because of the motion of moving against a magnet. And I think it's having the same effect. We know it benefits the immune system. And that's one of the key things that bees are struggling with all the chemicals in the environment, with the mites, with the, you know, loss of vegetation, the further distances they have to go. You know, anything that could help their immune system, preventing the harm from the mites, the pesticides, I think is going to benefit the colony. So this is beneficial not only against electromagnetic fields, but all the injuries that they're likely to suffer because of their environmental deterioration. And we know that it reduces pain in humans. I don't know to what degree it might do that in bees as well, but it has very, very significant beneficial effects that increases the energy in your mitochondria. And I suspect it does that to the bees as well. So basically, they're healthier, they have more energy, they're able to do their job better. And if we had that in our own home, we'd be a lot more productive as well. So all in all, it's just a highly beneficial addition to the beehive, and the bees seem to be really enjoying it.
Why is some electromagnetic frequencies, why are some harmful and some beneficial?
Well, the beneficial ones are very often at a certain frequency. They have a certain waveform, and we're exposed to them for anything from, minutes a day. That's basically how long you would expose yourself to a PEMF mat if you were lying on it for therapy. When it comes to some of the harmful effects, they're chaotic. So when you turn on your Wi-Fi, your cell phone, your cordless phone, the smart meters in your home, all of these are sending out chaotic energy. It's information that's valuable to the utility because they can decipher it, but it's constant and it's chaotic to the body. And so when something is chaotic to the body reacts to try to balance it. So for example, if someone's pushing you gently, you're going to push back just to maintain your balance, that sort of thing. And the more often that's done, the more energy you have to put into maintaining your balance. And so that energy can't go to the jobs that you're doing. And I think it's very, very similar with the bees.
Brent, let me just get you to kind of restate the 4RB's mission, what you aim to do with these pure wave cells, and how my audience can help the beekeepers and help themselves.
Yeah, no, that'd be my pleasure. So the mission that we set out, because of the way I designed this, is that just what Dr. Magda was saying is that there's these wonderful PEMF mats and proven technologies that help humans. The issue that I had is, how do I take electronics out of the picture and get something into a hive? Because electronics doesn't work in a hive, so I had to use DC versus AC current to be able to, and I felt that's better, and that's where the magnets came in. So this leads us back to the pure wave cell. So that'll hold it for 20 years. That strength will stay there with these neodymium magnets, and I truly believe that's how the ancients used it, because they didn't use electricity, so they used some other. It's like a bonding agent, right, that holds it. So our mission was then to go out, how do we expand that so that people could use it for themselves in a less expensive way? Because PEMF mats are amazing, but they're expensive. They're something that's at a high cost, in the thousands of dollars. And so I wanted something for home use that could be used, as one of our people that had it said, I got rid of pain in my body. How else do I use it? Well, are you using it in your fridge? Are you cleaning your food? You can use it every day. It's like very versatile, right? And then so how the mission was then, how do we go out and get the public, but give the public something in return that's really beneficial for them? At the same time, they're building up the beehives and helping that. It's just a total win-win, right? So our mission was to do that. Our mission now is we're doing both. We're going to expand that. We're going to change it out in the world, and we're going to give you amazing stuff at home, that you can use in your lives every day, whether that be honey or the pure wave cell, and that it's just a complete win-win. So the mission is to go out and get this changed out there. That's our food sources, and then for your own health at home too, along with other other things you're doing. So that is our mission when we go out there, is saying, come on, get something for yourself, support that, and look what you're going to do, and we'll report back on that and show you what you're making a difference in the environment. How many people can actually make a difference in the environment by what they're doing? And this is what we can do.
So the pure wave cells and the honey at 4rbs.com, the number 4, the letter R, bees.com. Use the code word honey, get 20% off. You buy the pure wave cell or you buy the honey, all of that money gets plowed back into the beekeepers, supporting the beekeepers, helping them with their habitat by planting wildflowers, giving them the pure wave cells for free for their hives. And then you're also buying their honey from them, which is available at 4rbs.com. And very quickly, so you've got healthy bees producing healthy honey, but you don't stop there. With the honey that you extract from the hives, you're also you're giving it an extra oomph with the pure wave technology. Just explain how that works.
Well, yeah, that actually came first. So I developed an instrument that produces a PEM, right, like a pulse electromagnetic frequency, because it's motorized and it moves the magnets in incredible speeds. But so what I can do with this instrument is I can change frequencies to lock on exactly what I want. Like so without guessing, we know what frequency we're using from the PEMF formats. And then so what we do is we pick that earth frequency. It's roughly about 12 hertz without getting into the details, and then we infuse that honey after it comes from the hives, after it's bottled. We show it in our video on our website. And Bob Conley was kind enough to come down and actually show what it looks like before and after energizing. And it's raw honey. So it's a little different in the sense it's not like that liquid honey that you pour, that because they've heated it or it won't crystallize. It's creamed and it's untouched, and we treat it. So we consider it, there's nothing else like it. Nobody does anything else like that with honey and has a source. Now, on that note, with our beekeepers, we support all beekeepers, but I don't purchase honey from all beekeepers because it depends on what area they're in. So if they're down in an area such as our Niagara regions or other areas that are highly pesticide for good reasons, they're great. That's not where this honey comes from. It's consistently coming from areas where it's maximum exposure to as little negative frequency and wildflowers as we can get. So we support all beekeepers, but honey comes from very special area, so we can really secure that you're getting the highest. Now, honey has incredible properties. For anybody that doesn't understand honey, we're going to post all kinds of things, what it does for you anyway, and then just on another level. So you're really getting, you're getting top drawer honey of the highest caliber.
4rbees.com, the number 4, the letter R, bees.com. Use the code HONEY, get 20% off the Pure Wave cell and the honey. Dr. Havas, any thoughts on when we might see this study published?
Well, we're just waiting for some information on the quality of the honey. I think we're going to be sending that out for some analysis, and as soon as we get that, we're ready to roll.
Fantastic. Dr. Magda Havas, thank you. Brent, you're not a doctor yet. Maybe an honorary. I sense there's an honorary doctorate coming in your future. I'm going to make that prediction now. Brent Knudsen, thank you. 4rbees.com. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Hello, friends. Welcome once again to another episode of Strange Planet. On this installment, the mystery of life energy. But before we get to that, just a reminder, if you'd like to become a premium subscriber, it's real easy to do. Just click on the link in the episode description, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. You gain access to commercial-free listening, special bonus episodes, 2 per month that are produced exclusively for premium subscribers, and you receive my monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. Again, the link is right there in the episode descriptions. All right, we are going to get into the evidence for the clinical benefits of energy-based therapies and the mystery of life energy. Dr. Eric Leskowitz is my guest, and in his book, he shows how energy therapies have been taboo in the West, from the French Royal Academy's suppression of Franz Mesmer's animal magnetism to the FDA's persecution of Wilhelm Reich and his orgone box therapy to Wikipedia's biased coverage of energy psychology. Dr. Leskowitz then reveals irrefutable evidence for the clinical benefits of energy-based therapies and describes the obstacles he faced to bring these holistic approaches into academic medicine. Dr. Leskowitz is a retired Harvard Medical School affiliated psychiatrist who practiced pain management for over 25 years at Spaulding Rehabilitation Hospital in Boston. He's published over 50 articles in peer-reviewed scientific journals and is the author-editor of 4 books, including the aforementioned The Mystery of Life Energy, his documentary about group energies in sports, The Joy of Socks, aired nationally on PBS in 2012, and he joins us from his home in Western Massachusetts. Rick Leskowitz, Dr. Leskowitz, welcome to Strange Planet. How are you?
Well, thank you, and thank you for the invitation to be with you here today.
My pleasure. So, how did you first become familiar with the subject of life energy, healing energy, and what, I guess, happened that caused you to, sort of focus your research and your attention on this subject?
Well, I had a conventional science background. My dad was a research scientist studying the immunology in animals and injecting chemicals and see what happened. And I was fascinated by all that. I happened to be good at science and math, so that was the course I took, and wanted to help people. So medicine was a way to combine the two. And I was on a fairly traditional path in college, more politically than anything else. This was the late 60s, early 70s. So there was the anti-war, don't trust the establishment kind of thing. But I took that more politically rather than conceptually. And so I was still trusting the medical establishment, if you will. I think what made the biggest difference for me was I took some time off before starting medical school and spent 2 years traveling Middle East and South Asia, and seeing that different people do things differently, and some cultures have a totally different view of what health is and what illness is. And so when I came back to start medical school, I was sort of a little bit removed from the mainstream. I also learned how to meditate before starting school, not as any spiritual path, but just as a kind of stress management technique. So I was a little bit of an outlier. And I remember in medical school asking after every lecture, what effect would meditation have on this disease or that disorder? And nobody knew, because back in 1976, there were like 2 studies in the world on meditation. So it was really naive on my part, but I want to know the answer, because so much of medicine admits that they don't understand what causes a lot of diseases. They'll say, well, it's your genetics, or, things that are out of your control. That's very disempowering. Mm-hmm. That's one of my issues with mainstream medicine. So I went on to psychiatry because that was the best way to get some of the mental consciousness aspects in there. But it wasn't until I was already out in clinical practice working in the VA, Veterans Administration system with post-traumatic stress disorder and combat veterans, that a friend of mine, excuse me, asked me if I would be interested in going to a lecture by a visiting healer from California. And I trusted Richard a lot, but all of my buttons were pushed because the word healer, I grew up in a secular sort of cultural Jewish family that worshiped science more than anything else. And the idea of healers just brought up Jesus and miracles and the Bibles, and it's all prejudices, but that's what was up for me. Fortunately, I trusted my friend's judgment and went to the lecture. This was a woman from Los Angeles named Reverend Rosalind Bruyere, and she talked about the energetics of health and illness in a way that, within 5 minutes, I knew this lady had the answers that medical school didn't have. And so I began studying with her. She fortunately came out to Massachusetts, Western Massachusetts, coincidentally, a couple of times a year for intensives. And I studied with her and that group of students for quite a while, 5 or 6, 7 years, I don't remember, but learning about not only the concepts of energy and energy medicine, but how to manipulate energy person to person. And that was just a whole other world that I could see now, where Western medicine had some blinders. They focus only on nuts and bolts, or flesh and blood. And that's very valuable. And I tore a ligament in my knee, and, for about 1 day, I tried to meditate it away, but I ended up relenting and getting surgery because, some things Western medicine is great at. Mm-hmm. But other things like chronic pain, for example, it's not so great. And that was where I went clinically and professionally. We took the patients that were sort of failures everywhere else, that had tried all the injections and nerve blocks and medications and what have you, and we taught them self-management instead. It was a very big conceptual shift to not rely on the doctor on the pedestal to give you some magic medicine, but there are things you can do for yourself. A lot of it was regulating your nervous system by stress management, physical exercise, flexibility, aerobic conditioning, daily management of your energy level. So things like that were very helpful. But as my approach was, I did not like psychopharm. I'll admit I didn't like prescribing those meds. So I tried to find ways to apply these energy approaches, and my goodness, it made such a difference. There's a couple of techniques I can talk about. One is the let's see, maybe the first one I can mention is the first one I learned was a technique that works with the energy field around the body, what's now called the biofield,
Yes.
like we call the aura. And we would learn how to feel something between your hands. That your viewers at home can do this, just putting your hands palms facing each other and going back and forth at some distance. You'll feel something. It could be a pressure, a tingling. Everybody's different. But my belief and the teaching is that you're sensing the outer boundaries of your energy field bumping into each other. And you can not only detect it, but you can smooth it out. You can smooth out imbalances. And so the technique actually looks like just smoothing out the air. It looks ridiculous if you're not a believer. It looks like
right. I visited Dr. Briere or Rosa Briere in California, I believe it was. If I'm,
yes,
I think it was California. Anyway, when I had a TV show and I watched her working on a patient. The biofield, is that at all related to the Earth's, the aurora borealis, the northern lights? Are they the same thing, do you think?
They're very similar. There's a lot of overlap, and that's one of the main research questions. Human beings do have a magnetic field in the standard sense of electromagnetism, and that's been measured and detected. There are Gauss meters that can detect it, and part of the group energy stuff that maybe we can talk about later has to do with what happens when these energy fields interact. But there's more to the our aura than just magnetism, and that's part of the really intriguing research that's going on. There's also evidence that the human body emits light called biophotons, which, when I first heard about it, that sounds ridiculous because we don't. But actually, if you get a sensitive enough photometer, you can detect individual particles of light being beamed away from the body. And, healthier people emit more light than ill people, and healers can direct it from their hands. So there's a lot of, hardcore physical evidence mounting that this stuff is real. It's very similar in some ways to the Earth's magnetic field and the aurora that you mentioned. And there are some other parallels based on the possibility that the Earth itself or herself is a living organism and has these same kind of energy pathways and meridians that we talk about.
How is the biofield, do you think, connected with? Well, Rupert Sheldrake wrote that book, The Sense of Being Stared At, where I think most of us experienced this. You have a sense someone is staring at you, and you turn around, and sure enough, someone is looking, burning a hole in the back of your head. Is that somehow connected to the biofield, or emitting these protons, or what do you think is happening there? Photons, rather. Photons.
That's a great example. First, I just want to give a shout out to Rupert because he's devised these very, very simple experiments to look at different aspects of the nature of the biofield that you don't need fancy equipment for. And the sense of being stared at is one of them. It's another one with phantom limbs that maybe we can talk about later.
Yes, for
sure. You're right. I'm sure everybody has experienced it, and maybe once or twice it happens and you think, it's just a coincidence. I just happened to turn around at that moment. But if you start to tune into it, you realize that there is something going on. And it's the sense of this outer boundary being intruded on. We have that with the sense of personal space, that people sort of naturally find the right distance between each other when they're talking to each other. With staring, they did some very simple studies where people were just connected to, just measuring their heart rate and things like that. They were behind a one-way mirror, and they were told at some point somebody's going to stare at you, and at some point they're going to stop staring, and we'll be monitoring on this side, and you tell us what you feel. And it turns out a large number of people are sensitive to being stared at. Their nervous system reacts but they're not consciously aware of it. A smaller percentage can tell. They say, yep, I feel it. No, I don't. And they're exactly right. But another large subgroup, their nervous system knows, but their consciousness isn't tuned into it. And I think that's a common thing, that people in general, this is a huge generalization, but are not well connected to the body system and their subtle energy processes. So they miss some of this. Now, the easiest way to think about it is that the eyes of the starer emit something that the body is near enough to detect. But the researchers, Marilyn Schlitz and Bill Browdy, did a really nice next step. And they said, well, what would happen if we move the subject to another room and the starer just watches them on a television, gets the image of them on a television? So you would think, well, that can't work because, the rays aren't going that way. They're just aiming at the TV. And yet that also produces effects too. So what people are leaning towards is that these things happen at two levels. One is the direct biofield interaction, and the other is the more consciousness level interaction that is more like science fiction, but it's not bound by space and time. And there's a lot of evidence for what they call non-local effects of consciousness. And, again, it's parapsychology, and mainstream science just totally dismisses it, even though there's a surprisingly solid and large body of research to document stuff like this. So it's, I think mainstream science tends to hold on to their paradigms because they've spent their whole career building it up, and if somebody just pulls out the rug from under them with a simple test, then that's threatening at a psychological level. So that's where some of the resistance comes from.
Can I throw in a couple of terms here, and I'll get you to give us some definitions? Chakras.
Well, the idea that we have an energy system, it's not just the outer field, the aura. It has to circulate within the body. And there's two main components to that, both of which were talked about in Eastern cultures for thousands of years. One is probably a more familiar one, is the acupuncture points and meridians, the pathways that it flows. But then, as you mentioned, there are 7 major centers called chakras, where the energy collects up and down the spine and has a different sort of quality, a different emotional or psychospiritual quality. There are some interesting correspondences to the nerve plexus at each location and the endocrine glands at each location. But this is part of how the energy gets transduced, is the word, converted from just subtle energy into physiological impact. So chakras they're real in the sense that if you learn to study them, you can detect them yourselves. It's a little bit harder to find instrumentation to do that. Dr. Margaret Moga in Maryland has done work with magnetic field detection and finding patterns that match up to the chakra. So it's, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Chi.
Well, that may be the key word in this whole discussion. Just by way of context, Western medicine is the only healing system in the world that does not invoke some sort of invisible healing energy to explain how people get better and why people get sick in the first place. We're very mechanical. So, the heart is a pump, the eye is a camera, things like that. Mm-hmm. True to a certain extent, but what ties it all together? What makes it work coherently? We don't have a good explanation for that yet. However, places like traditional Chinese medicine, they have this notion of an invisible energy, which they call qi. And they have many ways of working with it to modify it. People are now very familiar with acupuncture as a direct way to regulate how it circulates in your pathways. Many of the practices like Tai Chi and Qigong, you can learn to do that yourself. And it's a huge breakthrough for us because in their model, Qi is the intermediary, the connecting link between mind and body. They have a phrase or a slogan that the mind directs the Qi and the blood follows the Qi. What that means, by the blood, they just mean the physiology takes its direction from the Qi, that the mind can shape it. It can be, you can be on a stress mode and shut down your chi, or you can be in a loving mode and spread healing chi, and the body responds in accordance with it. So that one sentence takes our version of mind body medicine into the next century or decade or whatever. It really opens up the whole world of the life energy. So life energy is what we call it in the West. Animal magnetism, it was what Franz Mesmer called it. Qi in Chinese medicine, and for the yoga people is prana.
Yes.
People know about there's different breathing exercises to regulate your prana by alternate nostril and things like that. So pranayama. So there's and in the book I list about 15 different terms from around the world to show just how widespread it is, and it's kind of humbling in a way to see how we've really missed the boat by focusing in on just the physical aspect of it. And it's changing a lot. It's changing a lot in the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So I think we're on to a good shift now.
Earlier, I asked you about the possible connection or relationship between the human biofield and the Northern Lights, or the Aurora Borealis, or I suppose the Southern Cross. But I'm wondering also, is there a relationship or a connection between the chakras and chi and what are referred to as the Earth's ley lines or dragon lines?
Well, that to me is the most fascinating aspect of this whole process. It took me the longest time to evolve into it, but I guess the way I could tell the story is I was fortunate enough to marry a British woman, not because she was British, she's a wonderful person, but she's British also. And so we got to go to England a lot. And that's where I first, I'd always heard about Stonehenge, for example, but to go to places like Stonehenge and Avebury, another stone circle that's even larger in area than Stonehenge, also in the same southern region of Wiltshire. And the first impression is, wow, this is very cool. But as I read more about it, I found out that over the last 100 years or so, people have begun to map out these special places. And started with just a surveyor who happened to notice that holy wells and chapels and stone circles on a map came out, in a line. And then they began to do more detailed surveying with dowsing as the technique of choice. And there are some maps of southern England that show points where these chapels and they're in a straight line that looks exactly like an acupuncture map of a human being. They're called ley lines, as you mentioned. That's the Middle English word for meadow or valley. But they are places where the energy is heightened. And so I think that what makes most sense to me is that the indigenous people, the pagan, if you will, chose these sites to build Stonehenge or whatever because of that focal earth energy, and they use the stones as resonators, almost like tuning forks. You could think of them like tuning forks. Stones have a electrical quality of crystalline quality of piezoelectricity. So there was something physical that they somehow converted subtle energy into physical energy. They could do their sacred ceremonies there and have their consciousness elevated. And I think it would also be used to help the earth and the fertility of the crops around it. So crops is another key word, because over the last 20 or 30 years, in the fields around some of these sacred sites like Stonehenge and Avebury, people began to notice overnight, if they were like on a hill looking down, these vast formations, patterns in the wheat fields where some of the wheat was laying down and some of it was still standing, and the shadowing made very dramatic pictures that they called crop circles. And it's a real puzzler, because when they first started happening, right away they got a lot of publicity about a couple of retired farmers who said they were making it by dragging planks of wood across the field and just literally trampling the wheat in this particular pattern. And even though it's very easy to disprove that, it got tons of publicity, almost like they wanted you to think that don't think about earth energy or ETs or anything like that. It's just some mundane explanation. But when you get a chance to see if wheat field a crop circle up close, which I have fortunately been able to do, it's totally different. Partly because it's very precise, and the borderline between wheat that's lying down and standing up is right to the individual stalk of wheat. Nothing is crushed, nothing is broken.
Yeah, well, it's like they've been weaved like a Persian carpet.
Yeah, there's a let's see if I can just have a tab here. One of my favorite pictures I took is from a let's make sure you can see that this little hillock, it's about 3 feet, 2 or 3 feet high.
Yes.
And each individual stalk of wheat is interlaced with the adjacent ones.
Yeah.
In a spiraling type of pattern that I don't even know how, if you set out to try and do it, I don't even know how you would do that.
No, you don't accomplish that by strapping boards on your feet and stomping around.
It's so obvious that it's kind of laughable. Mm-hmm. So it makes you wonder about, you alluded in your intro about kind of suppression of evidence, that I think there are some forces that don't want us to really get into it too deeply, but they're still persisting every year. There's at least a dozen that are totally magnificent. Yeah. There are also some that are, you can tell are fake. But there are organizations in England that, do this ongoing research and measuring what's different about the magnetic field there and radioactive and
yes.
negative ions. And, there are factors of it. One of the coolest illustrations that something unusual is happening is that in that wheat field the following year, the wheat that comes up grows stronger, yes. right in alignment with the pattern from the previous year.
Yeah, greater yields.
So something gets imprinted at a level we don't really understand, but something. I mean, there's so many aspects to it that we don't understand that I think it's really important to pay more attention to.
Rick, we'll take a quick time out, come back, and continue to discuss the mystery of life energy. Stay with us. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Dr. Rick Leskowitz is with us. The mystery of life energy, biofield healing, phantom limbs, group energetics, and Gaia consciousness. You mentioned Franz Mesmer. We get the word mesmerize from Franz Mesmer. And he's, I guess, been kind of set up as the straw man in order to discredit all energy healing and life energy and subtle energy and so forth. Just give us a bit of a primer or a crash course on Franz Mesmer and his theory of animal magnetism, and whether or not he should be regarded as a fraud or a charlatan.
It's funny, there was a movie made about him starring Nick Nolte about 20 years ago, and the byline was fraud, charlatan, or genius. So those are the 3 choices, mm-hmm. And I think that's true. He has been made out to be the target as a charlatan. But he was a physician he was originally from Austria in the late 1700s, who from an early age was interested in unusual aspects of health. His thesis in medical school was on the influence of the planets on the internal organs, so medical astrology, which when I read about it, I laughed and said, how could anybody believe something as ridiculous as that? But it turns out that there are physicians now who are using this overlap approach. There's actually a friend, holistic psychiatrist in Boston, Judy Safir, who uses that as part of her functional medicine work. But anyway, so Mesmer was interested in these things, but this was a time when scientists were just discovering electricity and magnetism. You know, Ben Franklin is flying his kite, and lodestones are magnetic. So he was fascinated by this invisible force. And, you know, a lodestone could emit the force. He had the idea that maybe human bodies could do the same thing. And he developed this whole sense of animal magnetism as opposed to, you know, physical magnetism. And he began to treat patients with that. First, he was doing it with his hands. And it's actually what they call mesmeric passes, is exactly what therapeutic touch is now. It's very ironic, but we sort of resurrected it without calling it that. So he would treat patients with that. His practice got to be very popular. He moved to Paris. He began to attract some of the wealthier patients to magnify his effects. He invented a form of group therapy where he would have a basin of water that he would magnetize, and people could sit around the basin and hold these iron bars that were immersed in the water and get benefit. So he became hugely popular, big threat to the establishment medical system. So they set up a royal commission to investigate him. And part of it was good because they did some, you know, blindfolded people to see whether they were getting real or sham. But the main thing was the head mesmerizer was not Mesmer himself. It was a student of his who was placed in an impossible bind by being told that if he produced evidence in favor of mesmerism, he would be kicked out of the Academy of Medicine. So it was like a career choice to blow it. So the findings were very negative. They said it was all the power of suggestion, and Mesmer was discredited and literally run out of town because they didn't have social media then, but they had pamphlets, and they distributed thousands and thousands of pamphlets around Paris to discredit him. So he left, but about 30 or 40 years later, a follow-up commission that was done in a more neutral way found positive benefits of it. Mesmeric infirmaries had been established throughout Europe. A British naval surgeon published a report showing how he could induce surgical anesthesia just by moving his hands like this. So it was, you know, it had a solid foundation until I think the turning point was when ether anesthesia, chemical anesthesia, was introduced in Boston, actually, in the hospital I worked at, ironically enough. And it was so quick and easy to use that people abandoned mesmerism very quickly. So Mesmer was left with having a very negative reputation. But my belief is that he was a pioneer. He was a genius, I think. And for better or worse, you know, he was like a lightning rod for a lot of negativity, and it took a long time. It's only in the last like 20 years or so that magnetism is being used therapeutically. You probably heard that there are ways of attaching small sensors and electrodes on the head and to pulsing electromagnetic frequencies to treat things like depression now are actually quite common. So, you know, took 200 years, but we finally got the message.
What clinical syndrome has given you the greatest insights into the nature of life energy?
You know, in the chronic pain program, we saw all sorts of musculoskeletal pains, myofascial pains, post-surgical pain. But the one that I got most fascinated by was the pain that happens after someone suffers an amputation. It's very common to feel as though the hand is still there, but many people are in intense pain in the region of the body that no longer exists.
The phantom limb syndrome, they call it here.
Exactly, phantom limb pain. So the medical explanation is that your brain is rewiring and recreating, and it's all an illusion created up here, and there's nothing there. But and I believe that. until I began doing some of this therapeutic touch stuff on, I remember there's one particular fellow who wasn't responding well to our program. So he lay down on the examining table. I told him, we'd just try something different. You just relax. You don't have to do anything. So he closed his eyes and relaxed. And I was doing the same sensing, smoothing out thing. And I still don't know why I kept going even to where his leg had been amputated, because there was nothing there. I just did it. And the same pressure feeling that I felt up here, I felt down in his leg. And at the same time that I was doing that, he opened his eyes and said, "What are you doing, Doc?" Because he could feel me touching his phantom leg, which shouldn't happen because there's no nerves down there to carry these messages. So for me, that was the most vivid demonstration that the biofield is a real thing. There's something out there. We may not be able to measure it yet fully. We may not be able to have pictures of it, but hands are sensitive enough to experience it. He was able to perceive. And I'm not the only one who's described this. Other energy practitioners have felt very similar things. Some people can actually see the phantom clairvoyantly. The energy psychology healer named Donna Eden, she has a case report where she sees the energy of the phantom and she treats it with her hands. So she's manipulating with her hands the the acupuncture meridians in empty space. So the patient thinks she's nuts because he's I'm over here. What are you doing over there? And yet he felt better. So it's stories like that really are eye openers for me. So I would have to say, this may sound bizarre, but I would have to say that phantom limb pain is my favorite pain. I'm glad I never had it.
Yes.
Because it's extremely troublesome for the people who have had it. But we've had patients who, when surgery is obviously a very traumatic thing, as is amputation, just from a psychological point of view. If you can treat the psychological trauma, that releases the energetic blockage and heals the pain. And the technique that actually is, I found, better than therapeutic touch is a way where patients are taught to tap on their own acupuncture points. It's called emotional freedom technique or tapping. And again, it looks very strange, but if a person will think about, like one example is a woman whose main trauma about the amputation was not the event itself and not the shame that she felt missing a limb, but just the frustration she had felt dealing with the insurance company to get coverage. She had a tremendous amount of rage about being denied coverage. Once we could dissipate that, because when you do these kind of things, it just leads to the kind of sense. And that, I think, is a release of built stuck prana or stuck chi. And when she did that, it allowed her phantom pain to dissipate. And so it's things that shouldn't happen by the standard medical model, but they do happen.
Any evidence that the phantom limb produces an aura? I don't know, anything like Carillion photography?
Well, that I think is the most promising direction for research to go, because as you mentioned, Carillion photography is a method that has been used to detect the energy field around it. Because of how the camera is set up, you put the objects between two plates of metal and do a sort of a mini lightning bolt, and how the electricity travels maps out what's going on there. So it generally has to be things that are thin. So things like coins and leaves were the subject. And you've probably seen, it used to be in the media a lot more, pictures of like a maple leaf, yeah, with the corona around the edge of it. So about 40, 50 years ago, one researcher said, what would happen if we cut off the tip of the leaf? Would that corona still go out and follow where it used to be, or would it just follow the border of the leaf? And I just happen to have here. This is what the image actually looks like. That for some reason the corona is still there, even though the tip of the leaf is gone.
Oh, wow!
And it really turns things upside down, inside out. Because normally you think, well, somehow the leaf is emitting or the body is emitting the biofield. But this makes it sound like the biofield is prior, is actually, the comparison is with the maybe you did this when you were 10 years old in school, but you put a magnet under a piece of paper and sprinkle iron filings on it.
Yes.
The iron filings line up in this really beautiful geometric pattern. If you sweep away some of the iron filings, the magnetic field is still there. You just can't see it. So I think it's very similar that it's like the cells in the body are like the iron filings, and you sweep them away by cutting them off. The energy field is still there, whether it's a leaf or a phantom limb. Unfortunately, these original studies have been very hard to replicate, and I'm working with a team of electrical engineers and biofield researchers to try and replicate it, not just for the leaf, but also for like phantom fingers. But we're not really sure what. There were some unique things happening with the original research that might have been. One of the ideas is that the person who did the original demonstrations had such, this may sound odd too, but he had such an affinity for plants that his biofield merged with the plant's biofield, the leaf's biofield, and magnified the effect. So he had literally the green thumb would be some form of biofield phenomenon. So we haven't had great luck replicating it. John Hubacher is the researcher who got some of these original images. We're getting there, but not quite there yet. But I think that would be phenomenal to have these kind of pictures for a phantom limb. Would really reshape our view of who we are and what we're about.
All right, let's take another time out. Back with more on the mystery of life energy right after these. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. And we are back with Rick Leskowitz, Dr. Leskowitz, The Mystery of Life Energy, Biofield Healing, Phantom Limbs, which we just discussed, Group Energetics, and Gaia Consciousness. So let's talk about group energetics. What is this all about? What does that mean, group energetics?
Well, I have a biofield, you have a biofield, and we're separate in space. But if we came together, different things would happen. And depending on the nature of the interactions, it could be a very positive thing, it could be a very negative thing. But the interactions are quite palpable. And, we've all gone to group events like a concert or a political rally or a sporting event or a meditation retreat where you can feel something in the air. And that, we have all the idioms about something in the air. But it turns out that interconnected energy is also measurable. And I happen to be a sports fan, and our local baseball team, this is almost 20 years ago now, it's hard to believe, it seems like yesterday, but it ended an 86-year drought and finally won the World Series, the World Championship of Baseball, which includes America and Canada.
Yes, the curse of Babe Ruth.
Yes, exactly.
Finally lifted.
So
that's right.
Yeah, there are all sorts of superstitions about why couldn't the Red Sox win. So when they finally did, it was just such a electrifying thing that so many people got caught up in that. I thought of using that as a story to tell the biofield science behind it. So I worked with my cousin Joel, who's a filmmaker, to document some of this. We got great cooperation from the team. We could go to the ballpark to interview players and fans. And, that was fun to hear the players because they are totally aware of the energy and how they work with when the team is cheering them on versus when they're in away game and getting booed, how to use that energy as well. Some of the players talked about how they can get into a state where they know exactly what's going to happen.
The zone? Is that the zone?
Yes, when they get in the zone, it unlocks literally psychic abilities that athletes have talked about. And that book by Michael Murphy called The Zone, Transcendent Experience in Sport, he talks about the zone as being a spiritual practice. So that's within the person. But when you have group coherence and team chemistry, great things happen too. So we did one very, very cool experiment about how heart rhythm is affected by emotions. There's a group in California called the Institute of Heart Math, and they have a very simple way of measuring, your pulse by your finger. And when you're in a normal frame of mind, it's very erratic. It doesn't have a particular pattern. But when you get into a state of appreciation, the heart rhythm goes up and down in a regular pattern because the heart's not a metronome. It slows down and speeds up in a very regular pattern. So what I did was went to their lab. I was the guinea pig. I was blindfolded and had earphones on, and my heart rhythm was being monitored. I don't know how to do the meditation, so I was not in a coherent state, or as Roland said, I was very incoherent. But four practitioners came in, unbeknownst to me, sat behind me and started to meditate to see what effect it would have on me. And within 10 seconds, my heart coherence readings went up and up and up and up. And it was just like really dramatic. And I could feel something in the air too. So that for people who want to watch there's a video of that. People can go to the book's website, the mysteryoflifeenergy.com, and under the resources section, they can click on to watch this demonstration because it doesn't look like anything's happening, and yet it's very dramatic. So we prove that there's positive group interactions in that way, and when people are in a state of heart coherence, their reflexes are improved, so their sports performance can be improved too. So, it's really got a lot of potential, and not just in sports, but team building in corporate settings or whatever. If you do like 5 minutes of mindfulness or 5 minutes of heartfelt appreciation, that can build a really, really powerful bond.
There's a term people are familiar with when there's someone, maybe when they enter the room, the vibe changes. Sometimes that person is referred to as an energy vampire, where people feel like just being in the presence of somebody, they feel like their energy has been depleted or, extracted from them even. What are your thoughts on this idea of an energy vampire? What are the mechanics at work here, do you suppose?
Well, there's two sides to that coin. Some people are so overflowing with energy that when people are near them, they feel filled and fulfilled, and they have that charisma, as it's called. And I think that's literally an overflowing of their vitality, their vital force. But the flip side, as you described, and I think we've all had this experience, is some people, just have a way of engaging you in conversation or whatever, that after 5 minutes, you feel like, "Ooh, what the heck was that?" And, you literally feel wiped out. And the people who can perceive energy more clearly say that we actually send out cords of energy, streams of energy that connect us to each other. And it can be used to flow out and nourish, or it can be used to pull in. And some people do not have the ability to generate their own healthy energy. And this is what happens. I actually, through that website, there's also a blog that people can read. And I wrote one about, might as well name names, President Trump, former President Trump, because one of the witnesses at one of his hearings said that he has no power. He takes it from everybody else, and that's how he builds himself up. And it was really another way of describing energy vampires. So that's also one of the tabs on the website is to follow on the blog, but I think it's a very powerful, it's not just a metaphor. I guess that's the main point. It's not just a metaphor or a figure of speech that for people who can perceive energy, you can just see the sucking and draining. That's why I think one of the keys to health is for people to learn to regulate their own energy system. I live in Western Massachusetts, and I can just look out the window and see the pine trees and the buds forming and all. And that just that allows me to, breathe it in. I, lived in suburbs and worked in the city for many years, and it's very hard to sustain that sensation when you're in that kind of environment. So if you don't have access to nature, that's where things like meditation or, everybody will be different. Some people, it's playing music can just bring them alive.
Right.
My wife does leathercraft. That's what brings her into that sense of unity. And so everybody's different. And I think it's important to honor that. And just as an aside, I know people are big on exercise, but my take is that if you're doing exercise out of fear that you're going to get sick or forcing your body to do stuff, it's not as healthy as if you're doing activities that you enjoy doing. Doesn't even have to be as vigorous or as aerobic, but if you enjoy doing it, that allows the energy to flow in a very, very different, healthier way.
Yeah, my wife, the Mighty Aphrodite, has a favorite quote. Exercise is not a punishment for the food you've eaten. It's a celebration of what your body can do.
That's wonderful. That's really great. Yeah, that covers it exactly.
Well, you mentioned getting outside, and I think with Tesla, Nikola Tesla talked about, there was nothing that ails him that couldn't be cured by a brisk 7-mile walk, and he talked about, I guess, the maybe the interaction between, I think he used the term torus field, our biofield and the Earth's torus field, and the intermingling of the two, the natural frequencies and so forth between the Earth and humans. And we only get that when we get outside and maybe ideally, walk in bare feet, touch the ground.
Right. That's another one. Yeah. I mean, we're so disconnected from nature as a civilization that's a big factor too. And again, people are waking up to that, the walking barefoot, the whole earthing phenomenon, where it's found that you actually do make an electrical connection with the earth, and it helps to discharge excess electrons. So that's part of it. Forest bathing is another approach, that just surrounding yourself with nature is a form of deep meditation. And there's a term that's out there now for how younger people often spend more time in front of a screen, diddling away there rather than being outside. So that they call it nature deficit disorder, to account for how it's really disconnected people are. And it's a challenge because our culture is so imbued with devices and virtual reality that it's hard to see how it's going to shift.
That's what I tell my twin boys. They're 17. I say, get outside. The graphics are better out there.
Yeah, it's real high definition stuff out there.
The mystery of life energy, biofield healing, phantom limbs, group energetics, and Gaia consciousness. Rick, great meeting you. Fascinating, huge topic. We barely scratched the surface. We'll have to do it again sometime soon. Thank you so much for this.
You're welcome, and thanks again for the opportunity to meet with you.
My pleasure. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there.